Hey guys, here's the gear. As usual for Austere August, we've got the Timeless 68 open comb, stainless steel razor, Semogue Owners Club boar brush, had it soaking in water for several minutes now, and this is the Taj handle. The soap and the scent from the cologne continue to be Chiseled Face Midnight Stag, modern cologne, and the vintage or a little bit older version of the label art for this soap. And I am gradually, slowly working my way through the soap. And I don't have to use very much each time, but that's just the way it works. I can remember I joined this hobby before they started bringing out a lot of the colognes for a lot of these soap artisan makers. And then, who started bringing out colognes first? I remember when Stirling brought them out. I thought I remembered when Chiseled Face brought them out, but I could be wrong. Yeah, that memory is just, I wasn't really concerned with the colognes and the EDPs very much, and so that part's not really in my memory. All right, we're going to get the boar back into some water. I'm going to get my face wet. Oh, if you've been tracking me this month with any regularity, you may have noticed that I've had to change blades. I have had to switch to another aftershave splash. This is Stirling City Slicker. It happened to be one that I had with me, and it matched the theme of the Midnight Stag Challenge in the sense it's a divisive scent that got weird reviews, and Rod got a lot of flack for it. And so I think it kind of fits the idea, and I love the scent. And so I'm using it in place of the splash, left it at a relative's house. And I had to use, at one point for a few days, a blade from the Dollar General store, their house brand that they have, and used it for a couple days because I left my blade at another location. This is the summer after all, so I've been taking my kids and traveling to visit family and things like that. And so it's just been a month of me forgetting one little something about every time I move, every time I shuffle around. And this past weekend I went, visited my kids over the weekend, and came back, and I left my Nacet blade at the other place. And I'll have it on the weekend, maybe sooner if I manage to get over there. But I thought, you know what? Let's just see what happens with this feather blade. This one is one I started a while back, and it doesn't have nearly as many uses as the Nacet, but it's got a lot more uses than most guys put on a feather blade. 63, I think, is the current count. And so I think it kind of qualifies in spirit as well, along with the Nacet. And people usually just take feathers a few uses and then say that they're not going to work for them anymore. I made some Sharpie annotations a while back. It was definitely before COVID, I think, when I started using this blade. And so it's been a couple of years. And I'm usually playing with the Nacet, whenever I want to do a marathon thing. And let's just see what this does. Now, when I first tried out this 68 open comb, it was quite aggressive, and there's no way I would dream of putting a feather blade in it, because the feathers do tend to be a little bit rough on me in their new state until they've been worn down a bit. But obviously with 63 uses, this guy is going to be worn down a little bit. Let's hope that's the case. And let's see what we get today with a shave. Why don't we try a dry method of loading this particular soap? I'm going to get my face wet, and then what I'm going to do is squeeze a bunch of the water out of the brush this time, instead of keeping it lightly wet as usual. So let's try that out. Definitely gonna shake a lot of the water out, and then a lot of guys, this is their habit. You know what? Let's turn you guys a little bit. This is the way they do things on a regular basis. They want to load with a very just lightly damp brush, and if they like it, nothing wrong with that. I don't know how the pickup is going to go in terms of pulling the soap onto the brush. I've definitely seemed to see evidence. And definitely. That's a habit of mine. Sorry about that. I say definitely, and I'm sure I mean some other word, because you can't say definitely seem and make any sense, right? But what I'm saying is that I've seen in many cases where the brush that doesn't release a little bit of water onto the soap when you load, it means you have to load a little bit longer. There's this happy medium of water on the soap that just lifts that soap right up into the brush. Too much water, and the brush doesn't really seem to gather up the soap. It just doesn't seem to have any effectiveness. Too little water, and it seems like the soap is not brought to a condition of soft enough so that it comes across to the brush. Empirical evidence, there's none. It's just my observation with hundreds and hundreds of shaves. So we're going to take this just a little damp. I mean, there's no way it's going to drip. It's squeezed out. Let's see what, 15 seconds. Shall we try something like that? Let's try that. I mean, a really light brush. I mean, who knows? Maybe with this coconut oil-based soap, it could make some kind of big difference. We are getting a white cloud there. Okay, that's 10 seconds, I think. Let's go to 20 seconds, just to kind of cover my bases here. And there we go. Ah, yeah, look, we've got definitely a different looking paste, a surface of the soap here. Very different. It sure looks like I picked up plenty of soap. Look at that. So 20 is probably an overkill, but let's just see what happens. And it could be that this method of stirring it up in a low water way, could that be some secret to making this coconut oil soap maybe work a little better without kind of jumping up with as much body, that sort of thing. Of course, since I squeezed out water, I am going to probably be adding a lot more water than usual. 20 milliliters, is kind of what I've had to add in a lot of scenarios, but since I squeezed the water out, we may be putting in that 40 milliliter jigger right there and more, who knows. So right away it did bubble up, similar when I've added the water, and then I was working it kind of gently. And it didn't take too long to switch from a watery, bubbly mess to what you see now, something kind of nice looking. And you can see it's starting to get a little thick on the brush. So I think I'm going to take the approach of a little water at a time and kind of frequent additions. Like once it looks like the water that I just added is absorbed, I'll stop and add some more. It may make no difference whatsoever to the actual end product, but if we find that out, then we'll know. Otherwise, how are you supposed to find some secret method to do something if you don't try weird things? What I'm curious about is how many passes of lather I'm going to get, because that sure looked like a lot of soap on my brush in its pasty form, right? got an airy lather. But you had pumped a bunch of water into it, and it was just maybe a coconut oil base or some other type of formulation that kind of bodies up in high structure, and you kind of wish it would congeal down into something wet and slick and kind of creamy all at the same time, you know. I wonder if you were to whip that up and then just let it sit for 15 minutes. Would the bubbles pop, you know? I know that if you don't have enough water, then that airiness just kind of becomes dusty cloudiness, and it collapses when you try to work it. But I wonder if you were able to put a lot of water in it, how it would be. Not looking too different than the lather I usually make. As we continue to get it hydrated. Some bubbles forming there, and not the micro kind. You can easily see them. That could mean that I may want to slow down and or stop adding water. Sometimes bubbles like that mean that you just need to mix it some more and get it more integrated. Sometimes, as in the case of this, where I've been working it for a little while, kind of gently, then if it happens at this point, it usually means, in my experience, that it's starting to get hydrated enough. The other day when I let a little bit of the soap sit on my face, just a little bit of residue left, I didn't do a full rinse. I did not have any post shave issues, no irritation or anything like that. Let's just go ahead and use this. Why not? It's definitely not as much volume as I have had in the past. So that's interesting that 20 seconds of loading wouldn't pick up as much soap. However, let's see what it does when it's on my face. Really interested to see what the feather does today. I really enjoy feather blades when they're young, and I use them in mild razors. But this is the opposite of that scenario. It's a generally aggressive razor for me, and it is not a fresh new blade. When I started the scrubbing motions here, you may have noticed, if the resolution was high enough, some little puffs, small bits of tiny dry lather. And I find that interesting. It may be because I have wet this lather down so much, maybe too much, that it's starting to lose its emulsion in a few places. It could just be related to the brush. I know that if you do this kind of motion right at first, sometimes you pump air through the brush a little bit, and that's almost like a blowgun. And so if there are some little soap fragments somewhere, they could, pop out. As if because they were shut out by the force of the air. Yeah, I'd say sure seems like this one is on the wet side. Maybe a little too wet for this base. Other bases, this would be perfect. So, oh yeah, let's see what our initial water. Yeah, 25 milliliters of water added. So it sure looks like I didn't pick up nearly as much soap as it looked like I did. So that's good information to have. All right, feather. Let's see if you're a good blade in this razor at this age. So far, pretty good. It doesn't feel aggressive. Razor is moving slick enough. Don't think I want to take this soap base any wetter than this. There is a point where, in my experience, a lather will have a maximum hydration, and any more water then starts to slow things down. It starts, I don't really know if there is a general concept of a lather breaking. Obviously, if it just turns all wet because you keep adding water to it, then it's broken, you know. But I don't know. Like this one looks very much like a lather, but it is, yeah, I think it's lost a lot of some of its slick properties, which is why I was saying let's not go any farther than this. Well, I'll tell you this, and this is not going to be a shock. The feather with, on its 64th shave is a lot more effective on the first pass than the Nacet on its 459th shave. And my face feels really smooth. My neck probably needs some touching up, but my face could easily walk away from this shave right now. My cheeks. And look just fine. Now, when I have a razor that's on the aggressive side, the proof is in the pudding when you do the shave after you take down that first pass. Because now stubble's not there to protect your face from the potential harshness. We'll see. See the skipping right there? That's a telltale sign of a lather that's too wet. So I definitely did not pick up as much lather using this method. My usual, in 20 seconds of loading, I didn't pick up as much lather as I get with 5 seconds of loading with a lightly wet brush. So I find that kind of interesting. I don't feel any irritation or razor burn right now. I'm going to get a good rinse now and just take a look at the results here. That's really pretty good. 2 passes. And this feather blade is still kicking. I don't do against the grain in general, and so I'm not going to do against the grain when I'm doing marathon type shaves. And so it may be a very different shave for somebody who needs to go against the grain. I think a different level of maybe a different level of sharpness is needed for that because of the way you're bending the hair against its natural direction. Perhaps it's just a guess. And so that could be why a lot of guys are not able to go as far as I am with these blades. I do have more lather to use. And so this is what a chiseled face original formula lather looks like when it's a little bit too hydrated, and it's pretty easy to spot. You can see those bubbles, and if you remember those larger bubbles that came out as a part of the lather building process earlier, and you can see how it's behaving in terms of the way it's dripping and moving. And if you've never gotten your chiseled face lather to this point, just to kind of check it out, I urge you to try it. Because you'll probably not land right here and really like it, but what you may discover is this could be level 10 on the hydration spectrum, and what you may discover is you've been stopping at level 5 or 6, and while 10 may be too far in terms of adding water, you may still have 7, 8, and 9 that are waiting for you there that could be something slicker and better for you. Give it a shot and see if you like it. If you still want to stay back at 5 or 6, do it, because that matches what you want, right? All right. This method obviously doesn't add as much water to the soap in terms of carryover to the next shave. And so that, of course, could change one's loading time. I am feeling just a little bit of facial tenderness, just a little bit. It's kind of the amount that you know is going to be cleaned up with a balm, or even with just waiting 5 or 8 minutes after the shave. So let's hit the splash here with City Slicker. Stirling splashes, if you have a face like mine, I don't think my skin is sensitive to a full sensitivity, but Stirling splashes do bother me and give me redness in certain situations. And so I think I am somewhere on the spectrum of sensitive, but not, a full scale sensitive. I can't, sometimes I have to space out my usage of the Stirling aftershaves. Or what I do is I might take some of the actual alcohol splash, mix it with some witch hazel. Speaking of which, I might want to try the Stirling Witch Hazel sometime. I've never tried that product. I think I should try that sometime. All right. Oh, yeah. Love that scent. Going to enjoy it while I clean up my gear. Kind of forgot to pay attention too much to how the brush was feeling today. Since it had a nice long soak, we lost another bristle. With 75 shaves on it or something, I am starting to wonder if I should be concerned about the single bristle loss per shave. We'll just see. We'll just watch it. Fortunately, there are just lots of bristles in there, and so it can still give you years of good use even if you just lose a bristle per shave. This is what it looks like after a good rinse and shake out in the sink. And then this is what it looks. Oh, look, we lost another one with the towel stropping. Just kind of up and down on the towel a little bit to take out the any of the more wet parts of the brush. So doesn't look too different, but a little more dry, a little bit more fluffy than from just the sink. So we'll let that sit. And of course, if you don't know already, there were some tests done several years ago, and it doesn't matter whether you set your brush on its base on the counter or if you buy a stand and hang it upside down. In terms of drying or really any other factor, it just doesn't make a difference. This doesn't dry it faster. It's the same speed. You may have a little bit better result if you leave your brush sopping wet and you put it in an upside down hanger to where it's going to drip. That's probably better on a stand. However, you shouldn't leave your brush like that anyway. That's way too much moisture. You're probably going to run into mold problems down the line. At least you're at much higher risk. And so once you remove any of the standing water with a good shakeout, and especially with a towel strop, then there's just no difference. Gravity's not playing a factor in this anymore. And so orientation doesn't matter. And most of those brush stands are going to mark up your handle in some way. Just so many of them are. And so you're really better off in general to keep it like that. Keep it pointed up, set it on its base, and let it dry that way. I didn't add any more water, so the 25 milliliters looks like it was what we needed. I shaved with 2 passes today of lather, and then I might have been able to squeeze 2 more passes out of what we saw there in the bowl. I bet I could have. The feather blade did really well today. With the light bit of tenderness that I was feeling, and it's really almost subsided already. The third pass could have potentially given me some razor burn, so I just didn't feel like chancing it. And so I could use a little bit of cleanup here in a couple of small areas, but the 2 passes did really well. And so I know that if I ever choose to focus my energies on this feather, because I do want to get it to the 100 mark as well. Other people have done it with the feather. And I think that's almost a better accomplishment than the Nacet getting it to 100, because the feather is just so well known as a sharp blade that people think dulls super quickly, and then they can only use it for just a few shaves. And so getting it past 100, I think is going to hopefully just bring more intelligence to people, help them to break some of the myths that are around, and a preconception. And so sometimes if a blade may tug or just not feel as primo sharp as it used to, people think it's dying and it's done. And often that's just not the case. Now, of course, if you want to do a one and done, if you got the budget to do that, if you, they're relatively cheap, blades are. And so if that's what you want to do, there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm trying to help those guys out there who are making the assumption that you should be pitching a blade at a certain time. And that's just a myth. You pitch the blade whenever your skin tells you that's kind of the maximum, you know, and it's going to differ per person. Also, my biggest effort in this whole marathon type thing that I do is to try to communicate that great technique is one of the biggest things to help you, I believe, in making these blades go longer. And so if you focus on great technique, then a byproduct is going to be, in many cases, longer blade life. So you make your blades stretch farther, more comfortable shaves per blade. That's what I'm talking about here. Not just stretching it into this bad land where the shaves suck. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about more comfortable shaves per blade. And so if that's the byproduct, then great. But even if you're still throwing a blade away after 3 or 5 uses, if your shaving technique increases, then that's a win for everybody. And that's kind of what I'm about here. In terms of the face feel and the comfort of the blade and razor today, I was surprised that it did so well. In fact, not only is it not showing signs of a really old blade where maybe it's starting to need more passes to get the job done, or special kinds of maneuvers and angles, it's showing the opposite. It did just 2 passes, and I got a nice close shave, and it's still showing the propensity to maybe generate a little bit of razor burn if I maybe had bad technique or something like that. So it's definitely staying on the side of, hey, I'm not old. I can still get the job done in a pretty eager kind of way. And that's something nice to learn today. So at the end, here is the Midnight Stag. And finally, I will be able to, because this is kind of an afternoon shave, enjoy the scent throughout the day as I, in a pensive moment, bring my hand up to think while looking at the computer screen. I'll be greeted and blessed with the scent of Stag. So looking forward to that. Just rich and enjoyable for me. I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this shave has got something for you to help you out in some way. You guys take care. This is Sugar Daddy Shaves. Bye.